The Ozark Mountains in 1900 were a wild, untamed land. Rolling hills, dense forests, and hollows where shadows lingered long after sunset. Nestled among them stood the Holloway Hotel, a sprawling wooden building with wide porches and creaky floors. From the outside, it looked like a safe haven for weary travelers. Its lanterns glowed against the wilderness, a promise of warmth. But locals rarely stayed there. They said the hotel had a hunger, that it drew in strangers but gave fewer back. Some claimed they heard screams at night, muffled by the wind. Others whispered of a well deep beneath the building, sealed long ago for reasons no one dared speak. And yet, travelers kept coming, drawn by necessity, unaware of what awaited. Thomas Holloway, the innkeeper, greeted every guest with the same practiced charm. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing blue eyes that never seemed to blink long enough. His smile stretched too wide, like it was pinned in place. His wife, Margaret, was his opposite, quiet, pale, her eyes always darting toward the cellar doors near the back of the lobby. When asked about the cellar, Thomas laughed it off. "Just storage," he'd say. But Margaret never laughed. She seemed like a woman carrying a lifetime of secrets, her voice always soft, as though afraid of being overheard. One chilly evening, a stagecoach stopped at the Holloway Hotel. A young schoolteacher, Clara Whitfield, stepped down, clutching her suitcase. She was fresh-faced, determined, and hopeful. The town had hired her to teach the valley's children, a task few dared take on. Thomas welcomed her warmly, taking her bag. Margaret offered tea but barely met Clara's eyes. As Clara signed the guest book, she noticed pages missing, ripped out cleanly, leaving gaps in the hotel's record. Something about it unsettled her, but she smiled politely and went to her room, unaware that her presence would soon unravel a dark history. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The floorboards groaned as though the hotel itself shifted in its slumber. She crept into the hallway for a glass of water when she heard a voice, Thomas's voice, murmuring near the cellar doors. "The well must remain sealed. No one can know," he whispered. Clara froze. She leaned closer, heart racing, but the step she took caused the wood to creak. Thomas turned, lantern in hand, his eyes catching hers. His smile spread too quickly. "Couldn't sleep, Miss Whitfield?" he asked smoothly. Clara stammered something about the night air and hurried back upstairs, but his words carved into her mind. The well must remain sealed. The next morning, Clara visited the village. Children ran barefoot, women hung laundry, and men hauled lumber from the mountains. At the general store, Clara mentioned her stay at the Holloway Hotel. The old shopkeeper's wife, Eunice Harper, went pale. "You're staying there? Child, don't you know?" Clara frowned. "Know what?" Eunice leaned closer, her voice trembling. "There's a well beneath that place. It's cursed. Folks who stay too long vanish. Their names ain't even remembered proper. That hotel feeds on sorrow." Clara forced a smile, laughing nervously. "Surely that's just a story to scare travelers." But Eunice's eyes glistened with fear. "You'd best leave while you still can." That night, Clara lay awake, Eunice's warning heavy in her chest. Around midnight she heard it again, the faint dripping of water, though no rain had fallen. She followed the sound, down the creaky stairs, to the cellar doors. She pressed her ear against the wood. At first, only dripping, then whispers, faint, human. "Help us. Please. Help." Clara stumbled back, her hand clamped over her mouth. She wanted to scream, but forced herself silent. Shaking, she hurried back upstairs, every instinct screaming to run. But her courage and her curiosity kept her rooted. The next evening, as Clara sat alone, Margaret slipped into her room. Her hands trembled as she clutched Clara's sleeve. "You heard it, didn't you? The voices," she whispered. Clara's eyes widened. Margaret's face was pale as moonlight. "That well? It doesn't give water. It takes. Long ago, something woke down there. My husband. He made a bargain. That's why the guests vanish. Why don't you leave? Clara whispered. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Because I'm bound to him. And because I've been too afraid. But you must leave before you're next. The following morning, chaos shook the village. A boy named Samuel Carter, no more than 9, had vanished overnight. His family had stayed at the Holloway Hotel, in the room just across from Clara's. His mother wailed in the church, clutching Samuel's shoes. Men searched the woods, but no tracks were found. Clara's stomach sank. She remembered the voices. She remembered the whispers. She knew where the boy was. Determined, Clara stole the cellar keys from Margaret's apron and waited until midnight. She unlocked the heavy doors and descended. The air grew damp, cold, suffocating. At the bottom lay the well, wide, stone, ancient, carved symbols wrapped around its mouth. The smell hit her, rot, earth, and something metallic, like blood. She lifted her lantern. The blackness inside seemed alive, shifting as though something breathed below. She leaned closer, lantern shaking. Then, Clara! Her blood turned to ice. The voice was Samuel's, weak, pleading. Help me. Other voices rose with his, dozens, maybe hundreds, a chorus of trapped souls echoing from the depths. Shadowy arms seemed to stretch upward in the flickering light. Clara gasped, nearly dropping her lantern. She staggered back, but her name still echoed. Clara, save us. Fascinating, isn't it? Clara spun. Thomas stood at the foot of the stairs, lantern in hand, eyes gleaming with madness. His smile was gone. The well gives life to this hotel. To me, every lost traveler, every weary soul, it takes them, and in return, it gives us protection. That boy, he belongs to it now. Clara's voice shook. You're a monster. Thomas's expression hardened. I'm a survivor. And now you know too much. Thomas stepped closer. You can join us, Clara. Keep the secret. Live with comfort. Live forever. Or, his gaze flicked to the well. Or you join them. Clara trembled but stood tall. I'd rather die than serve your evil. Thomas lunged, but suddenly, Stop! Margaret stood behind him, knife in hand. For once her eyes blazed with fire. Her voice shook, but grew stronger. No more, Thomas. I let you take too much. You took our daughter. You took my life. But tonight, it ends. Clara's breath caught. Their daughter? Margaret raised the lantern and hurled it into the well. Flames roared, fire spilling along the strange carvings. A monstrous howl erupted, shaking the ground. Thomas screamed, clutching at Margaret, but the floor split beneath him. The cellar shook violently. Stones cracked, wood splintered. Clara and Margaret scrambled for the stairs. Behind them, Thomas's cries echoed as the earth swallowed him whole. The well roared, collapsing into itself, pulling everything down. Fire and smoke filled the chamber. The women barely made it upstairs before the entire floor caved in. The Holloway Hotel trembled like a dying beast. Then, with a final groan, it collapsed into rubble. When dawn broke, the Holloway Hotel was gone, reduced to ash, charred beams, and a smoking crater. Villagers arrived, wide-eyed, gasping at the destruction. Clara and Margaret stood amid the ruins, coughing, covered in soot. And from the rubble, Samuel Carter crawled out, pale, shaking, but alive. His mother screamed his name, rushing to hold him. The crowd wept and prayed. A miracle, they said. Though the villagers whispered, officials never recorded the truth. The fire was marked as accidental. The hotel was forgotten in public record, its horrors erased. But the people knew. They avoided the ruins, avoided speaking Holloway's name. Some said the land itself was cursed. But for Clara and Margaret, silence was no longer an option in their hearts. Margaret, freed from her husband's shadow, moved into the village. Though grief weighed on her, she devoted herself to the needy. She cared for orphans, fed the hungry, comforted the grieving. "I was silent too long," she often said. "Now I'll use the rest of my life to protect the innocent." Her hands still trembled sometimes, but her heart grew stronger each day. Clara returned to her teaching with renewed fire. She saw every child as precious, every lesson as a shield. She often told her students without detail, "When something feels wrong, when someone suffers, don't stay silent. Silence feeds evil. Courage defeats it." Her words stuck with generations of children who grew to tell their own children. Years later, travelers still whispered. Some claimed to hear cries near the ruins during storms. Others said they saw a lantern flicker in the dark. But the story was never written in books. It lived only in hushed voices, in warnings passed down by families. The Holloway Hotel was gone, but its memory lingered, a ghost of greed, silence, and redemption. On her deathbed, Margaret took Clara's hand. With tears, she whispered, "The first soul the well took was my own daughter. Thomas. He sacrificed her during the famine. I stayed silent because grief chained me, but saving Samuel, it freed me." Clara held her hand tightly. "You broke the curse, Margaret. You found redemption. Your daughter would be proud." Margaret's lips trembled into a smile as she closed her eyes. The story of the Holloway Hotel remained banned in history books, erased to protect the town's pride. But in hidden journals and whispered tales it lived on, a reminder that even in the darkest hollows, courage and compassion can light the way.